I've just got a few more questions before I invite questions from the audience. One of the most important things about the film, for all the wonderful editing and all the research that went into it, is of course the central performance by Chris Langham. And thinking about this earlier today, and when I say Chris Langham, his acting probably isn't now the first thing you think of. And it reminds me of Orwell's essay on Salvador Dali, where he said we ought to be able to simultaneously on our hands hail the fact that Dali is a good draftsman, but also a disgusting human being. And that sort of tension between the quality of the art and the personal life of the person doing it. And I don't want to talk about personal, but I want to just concentrate on the art of that performance. How did you find Chris Langham? Had he been suggested to you? Was there a casting process?
Well, there was a casting director, and she came up with a number of names. As always, when you get some money from the BBC, they also give you the list of the 10 most well-known actors then around. So there were those names on the table as well. But very quickly we ended up with Chris. So he was the only person we approached. As soon as I didn't really know his work that well, but as soon as I saw the photograph and then I looked a little bit at his work, I realised that he would be great. I wanted to use a comic because comics are people who were able to perform on their own, and I knew that that's what he would have to do in this case. Most actors are very good at reacting and being in a room and performing with other people, and I knew that whoever took this on would have to carry it. It's almost a stand-up show. Many of the people who Chris, he was very patient. Very often he's there with 7 people who are extras, frankly, and we're stretching them a little bit quite often, and he was very patient with all of that. So anyway, I wanted a comic, and then I met Chris, and straight away realised that he would be right for it. He had exactly the right energy about him.
Was there anything else you were looking for in the person who played Orwell?
It's very difficult when you're casting for a real person, because there's the whole look-alike thing, and then there's the whole people who've got the shared experience and all of this, and you can't, and it's generally casting's very tricky, and you can't actually have too many preconceptions when you begin casting. Somebody comes in and they either are the person for you or they aren't, and Chris came in and he was the person very quickly. It was me and Emma Willis, who was the executive producer, who's hugely influential in this film, and executive producers aren't always, but she was, and we met him and we both of us knew immediately he was right, and in fact there was never any doubt from anybody else that he would be right for it. He got it straight away.
How did he go about reconstructing sorry, maybe that's not the right word, but how did he go on, how did he inhabit the role? What did he do in order to get the voice?
Well, we did a little bit of research about the voice. There's a film that the BBC did in 1984 with an actor called Ronald Pickup, who played it about Orwell on Jura, and Ronald Pickup, it turns out, that had been at a time when quite a number of people who knew Orwell were still alive, and Ronald Pickup, when he did his research, had met them and had worked on his accent with them, but then said he later toned it down because it would have been too extreme otherwise. So we had that, because there were of course no recordings of his voice. And then we did experiment a bit with the voice, and in the end went with something we felt was right for the film rather than any kind of imitation, because I think it was more important for the film to be right than for us to have a good imitation of Orwell's voice. And in terms of other research, Chris had never read anything by Orwell, and I don't think ever did. He just played the script. You'll find this time and time again, performers don't necessarily do research outside the script because they want to play the script.
Well, my final question before I invite questions from you. How did your impressions of Orwell as a writer and as a man change while you were making the film?
My respect for him, and I'd even say my love for him, just deepened, and it still does. The number of times when you the more you know his material, the more often you find truth in it. And so I would have said it was a, yeah, I never got disillusioned with it. I never came across it being I never came across any fakery in it. So I don't know whether it changed really, it just deepened.
Well, thank you very much. Do we have any questions from the audience for Chris?
Yes, I think it's a brilliant bit of work of film. I know you've just come on to the question of the speech of Chris Lanham. I felt throughout, well, he, of course, Orwell was an old Etonian, but at the same time, I wonder whether it did sound a bit too much of Toff's diction to me. I thought because of his down and out experiences and so on, I just wonder whether it wasn't just a bit too posh. If for instance, you'd had John Hurt or Tom Courtenay, perhaps both of them a bit old, but if they had done it, they don't think they would have perhaps used such a Toff's voice for it.
Maybe not. I mean, I you know, as I say, I think Orwell spoke with an extreme Toff accent. I don't think it was just the Etonian experience of his 5 years in the police force working for the Empire.
Yes,
And
yes.
I mean, that little moustache gives the game away. So I don't know. I mean, I maybe we could have done it differently, and I'm sure another performer would have done it differently. You know, that's all I can say. You may be right. I may, you know.
I do think that Lamb's performance was brilliant, and I would never have thought of him, having seen him in comedy so much, and brilliant, talented comic actor. I would never have thought he was right for that.
Well, like a lot of comic actors, he is also a professionally trained actor, and his father runs a
yes, I've heard his father
theatre company as well. So he's very, you know, this wasn't strange territory for him.
Next question, please. Yes.
Towards the end, I got a sense of like his pessimism was quite emphasised, but also it was kind of energetic pessimism. Like it wasn't a sort of faith. It's like he was always doing things, and he never, like, he started fighting as soon as he could and went out and things. And how was that? I mean, was that like a intentional emphasis or something?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I hope he never thought. I don't think pessimism is the right word. He does think that the world is really grim, but he hopes and believes that humanity has the strength to make things better. And what he talks about is his ability to stare unpleasant facts in the face, and that is a pretty unpleasant time for him. And he really does think that the world, by the end of the war, is on the brink of something really horrible, really, really horrible. I mean, he moved to Europe perhaps because he thought they were going to nuke Britain. So there's that. The thing we tried to do in the film is, as he gets very dark, I mean, you'd have to be in a very dark place to write 1984. That's what the film sets out to do. The film sets out to explain how a mind gets to a place where it can sit down and write 1984. So we had to kind of turn that dial right up to the 11 to get him to be into that place. But the film, what we did in the film was we started injecting colour at that point. So it starts to move from black and white into colour just as his world is getting very dark. So we're trying to reflect visually that the hope that he always had, and that is even there in 1984. Although it's only a glimmer, it's a very pale flicker of hope.